Hello, I've been running, and the name Karen Blackman popped into my head. Who is Karen Blackman?
Who am I? I would say, a yogi. I've been practicing for about 30 years, been teaching for 21. I am a daughter. I am also a friend. And you know what? People call me Yoga Mama Bear. So I guess I'm a mama to many, right?
What
Mhm.
inspired you to become a yoga expert?
When you see the word expert, I wouldn't consider myself an expert because yoga practice is one that you're always learning, you're always growing. I don't think you can ever be perfect in it. I wanted to make a change in my life. I used to work in TV, in sales and promotions for years in North America and Canada. It just wasn't fulfilling anymore. It was contradicting how I felt in my heart. And I started doing yoga, and the more I did it, the more I felt like, wow, this is changing me. So I took a teacher training, and once I did it mostly not to do teaching. I did it because I wanted to learn more than I was getting in the 1 hour class. So once I did it, I was like, wow, this is life changing. I want to share this. And who do I want to share it with? At the time that I was doing yoga, if you saw two Black people in a class, that was plenty. And I wanted to inspire and share this knowledge that was making me so alive and feeling so amazing with people that look like me.
Well, you said that you started off just wanting to learn yoga, was wanting to do, and you've ended up teaching, and you've done that for 31 years.
Well, teaching for 21.
Tell me, what have you gained from 30 years of practice?
Well, for me, I had a temper. In fact, I still would say that I have a bit of a temper, and I've learned how to sort of manage that. So now when I get upset about things, it's not about just losing it. That did happen to me years ago. I was on the job and something wasn't going right. I lost it. It was the very first time in my whole life. It was the first time that I got suspended from my job. I was like, wow, this is on my record. At that time, I was doing yoga, but work took over. Every time I would go to work, I'd have my yoga bag, I'd have everything, and I would never get there because I was at work until 8, 9 o'clock at night, sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning, working on a project. So I sacrificed myself for the job. And when that happened, I realized, no, this is not going to happen anymore. I'm going to change. I'm going to keep on with my practice.
How has changed your life from being someone who gets angry?
Right. One of the things I learned, and well, in what I learned on my journey with learning to be a teacher was that there is this thing in Indian yoga. And I'm going to say Indian because I've since discovered there's African yoga, there's all kinds of different styles, right? But in the Indian based yoga, there's this thing called the 8 limbs of yoga. The asana, or the movement part of the practice, is the third thing on the list. So it's not even the first thing. And this is what I thought. I thought yoga was just doing poses. Then I learned about the first 2 limbs, and these were mind blowing, life changing for me. The first one being your yamas, well, the first two being your yamas and your niyamas. Yama is your relationship between you and the world, and then your relationship between you and yourself. I realized that those were important. So I set about a path on trying to master, for lack of a better word, those 2 things. I thought I can always work on doing a headstand. I can always work on doing a warrior two. But trying to be a good person is hard. It's hard when maybe you're confronted with someone at work who's like, ah, do I have to come to work and face this person one more time? How do you deal with that? There's other ways besides getting angry. There are other ways that I could do this because it's unfolding for me. All this knowledge, I can take it one day at a time. As I told you, I'm a perfectionist, but even that I'm trying to work on because there's the philosophy of not attaching a label. Nothing's perfect, nothing's imperfect. It just is. And trying to be okay with what is and let it unfold. That's where my life has taken me, or the path has taken me.
You've talked about how yoga has helped you not to become angry and helped you to manage your anger. Does that mean that in Trinidad, if we had yoga wider, we could have less anger?
Yeah, because anger is not even just so much how you relate with others, right? Anger, so get to the root of it. Why is the person angry? That's where my teaching path has taken me, trying to figure out why is this person upset? I was told a long time ago by a teacher of mine, they said, you know, Karen, when someone's angry, it's usually not about you. It's something that they're dealing with. I have 60,000 plus teaching hours under my belt. That's a lot of bodies, a lot of things that I've seen. And one of the things that I've seen is pain. A lot of people have back injuries, knee injuries, shoulder injuries, and then they're trying to function, sit down in a chair all day long at work. Meanwhile, their back is in pain, right? If your back is in pain, if you're feeling pain, how can you be a happy person? You can't. Right? You're always going to be a little grumpy. You're probably going to bite someone else's head off because of what you're feeling inside. So then I started focusing on the pain. My yoga journey, my teaching practice is not so much about focusing on the yoga words and whether or not you can do a warrior two pose perfectly. My journey has taken me to how can I get you to be in a pain-free way of living? How can you move pain-free? And that's where my journey has taken me. So I figure like once I tackle the physical, then the emotional is starting to get healed. You're not as angry anymore. You take life easier. You know what I mean? We talk about not being the happiest place around. There's a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, panic attacks happening. That can't be a happy place, right? So I try in my classes to also keep it light. Yes, we focus on the change and the improvement, but how can I take that moment and still make you feel good inside? Another thing I wanted to change when I started doing this yoga stuff, when it came to Trinidad, I wanted to make sure everyone was seen. Everyone. When I used to go to a class, if you were a little bit heavier, if you didn't fit the mold of what a yoga person is supposed to look like, a lot of those people were put into the corners or the back of the class. A lot of yoga teachers are afraid to work with those people, right? I want people, when they come to my class, doesn't matter what you look like, who you look like, it doesn't matter. I make sure that everyone is seen.
How would you help people reconnect themselves through the work you do?
Well, I try to do that through the community, right? When I first came, my whole mission was, let's get everybody to do yoga. Come on, do yoga, do yoga, do yoga. The next thing was I wanted to have this central space where people could come. We could all do yoga together. I kept looking around. I couldn't find that place. Then I went through the stages of how can we enhance the community? So let's do events. Let's do retreats. Let's do different things like that. And then it was about, oh my gosh, they can't afford yoga. That was the next story. So I started having free classes, $20 classes. I tried to work on making it accessible. I even created a charity to try and get people who couldn't come at all or people who needed things. I tried to give donations to make a change that way. Then I was like, I can't keep doing this by myself. I need help. So then I started having teacher training. I wanted to get people who were alive and wanted to make a change just as much as I did, give them a chance to see how they can also influence and inspire other people. And I had other teachers helping me do that. And then from the teacher trainings, it became like, what do I do next? For me, it was just keeping the space. Don't overthink it. Just keep the space so people can come and be at home. They can come, feel like we're family. They can still learn, they can heal.
So, Karen, you've been teaching yoga for 21 years. Can you give me an idea of how many people you've taught? You don't have to give me the exact figure, but just an idea.
Yeah. Well, it was 60,000 hours, right? That's a lot of classes. If I look at my database alone, I have 20,000 people in there.
Absolutely wonderful. 20,000
Yeah.
people in your database.
Yeah.
Now, here's my thinking on that. Then
Mhm.
Trinidad ought to be a more yoga-centric place. What's keeping us back?
While I've had that many people come through my doors, there's still how many more? 1.4, 1.5 million
Yeah.
people. 20,000 really is just a drop in the hat, right? But we still have this philosophy or this belief that yoga is, by some people, yoga is evil. A lot of people think that it's a religious thing and they don't want to get involved. They think it's going to compromise their beliefs, you know, whether they're Christian or Catholic or whatever. The main thing that I always have to tell people is that yoga is not a religion. There are, as I said, different elements to this practice, but it's not a religion. It's a philosophy. It's a way of life. You could choose to take the path that is more religious, I guess, for lack of a better word, right? That's more spiritual and brings in a lot of the talk about different gods and all that kind of stuff. You could do that. But you could also just take the knowledge of self-healing, of learning to focus, of trying to be a better person. All that stuff has nothing to do with religion, right? That's just being a better human. So once we get past that, then we would probably be able to enjoy the benefits more of what this has to offer. So I've had to change how I teach. I don't do chanting in my classes. If someone wants to get into that, I have a meditation class that is separate, and that's on a Sunday. But now, so many years later, I've noticed that more people are asking about it. We're getting there. If you compare to North America, they've been doing this since the 50s. When I first came, there was no open style yoga studio. This was in 2004, 2005, right? That didn't exist. So we now reach. So to say that it's holding us back, I wouldn't say it is. I say that we're progressing nicely. Just every so often, have the conversations with people, explain to them, try to ease their superstitions. And then with the birth of Kemetic yoga, which is African yoga, then now there's another way that people can be like, oh, so there's that. Okay. So it's not so like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what is your vision for expanding the impact of yoga on our country?
So for right now, you know what my vision, and this may seem very limited, it's just to be present. When I first came, I came with such fire. I needed to have a yoga studio now, and I needed to get people into class. I was teaching 8 classes a day. I was going from 4 a.m. until 11 p.m. Teach, yoga, yoga, yoga. And now I'm just being present. If people come to me, awesome. If they hear about my classes, awesome. I'm just making sure you have a great experience. I'm learning more about different body types. I'm learning more about more injuries. I'm learning more about what depression means, what anxiety means. I'm learning more about trauma-informed types of yoga. I'm trying to be present, not just for me, but for the people who I cross paths with, so that we have a better experience together. I'm not trying to be a superhero. I'm not trying to do more than I can personally handle. I want to be a good teacher, not a frantic, panicked, power-hungry, driven teacher.
Lovely.
That makes
So
sense.
what advice would you have for young people? Because we often in our country think of young people and we want them to be lawyers, doctors, and engineers. And so what advice do you have for a young person who would like to be a yoga instructor?
Being a yoga instructor is a lot of hard work. If anyone comes into this thinking that they look at Instagram and they think, wow, I want to be able to travel the world like that yoga teacher, and I want to do this and I want to do that. If you want to be a real teacher, I always say this at the beginning of my teacher training. This is your journey to deciding whether or not you want to be an instructor or a teacher. You can be an instructor any day. Sure, you can travel the world, you can do all these different things, make it look exciting, or you can be a teacher. A teacher is there for their students, and you're there to guide them, help them, and mentor them, to give advice. It's a lot of work, and you have to be a strong person yourself. You have to work on yourself before you can receive that load. How are you going to be present for anyone if you're not even present for yourself? So you got to do that. So that's where your yama, my relationship with me and the world, comes in.
You've talked about the distinction between an instructor and a teacher, and that is such a wonderful statement. So how are you going to get people to understand that difference between being an instructor and being a teacher?
Through my own journey, I lead by example. When I am teaching in my classes, people can see that I am specifically making sure each person is addressed. I never leave a person behind. And you can see that if they feel good about that and they want to do that, they see the work that it takes. Yeah, I've been told many times they want to do a class with, say, maybe another teacher, but they feel afraid because they won't be seen. So people see that. They see my hard work, and that's important. But I would also say be your authentic self.
Mm.
Don't be afraid. Don't put on, the yoga hat and the weird voice that you hear on YouTube or whatever. Just be you.
Be your authentic self, is what you just said. And as
Yeah.
we bring this interview to an end, what would you like us to remember from this conversation?
Don't let anybody kill your dreams. When I first came, I was told no one's going to take yoga. No one's going to do it. But I was determined. I was like, they're going to do it. And they're like, no one's going to do it. Don't let anyone kill your dreams. Find a way to do it. Just be positive. Let the universe speak to you. Listen. The messages are there, the signs are there. If it's a really good idea, it's a good plan, just work on it. Don't let anybody kill your dreams. Here I am. The Sangha is going to be celebrating 20 years in Trinidad and Tobago. That's a big deal.
And as we come to an end, we congratulate you on 20 years in Trinidad and Tobago. Be safe.